Test. Test.
I don't know, about 19 something. Wow. And our kids grew up together. So we used to always go to the beach with our kids every summer and hang out and lay on the beach, and she doesn't go anymore. So anyway, those days, it's wonderful to have a summer vacation, and I know what it means to be giving up a day of that, or at least a morning of that, to share this time with us. So I just so appreciate you carving out the time to give us your input. Dr. Marie Aurelian from UC Riverside. Most of you know her. If you do not, this is Marie.
Hello.
She is our key researcher and partner from UC Riverside. You know that we have a three-partner consortia, thank you, the C word, a collaborative consortia with Cal State San Bernardino, and you know our Cal State folks because they train with you.
Right.
But UC Riverside is the group that, first of all, does the RBO. So they're the behind the scenes, making sure that the RBO happens. But then a key piece of Marie's function is the research and what's happening, how can we make induction better, is it working, what's not working, and so she's done some brilliant work and is a fabulous researcher, and we're really so lucky to have her part of RIMS BITSA. So she's really going to lead our discussion today in the form of a focus group interview. And are you recording this for us?
I am. As a matter of fact, while you bring that up, I do have the recorder on. Is anybody uncomfortable with being recorded? Raise your hand if you're uncomfortable. Oh, so it is okay then. Okay.
So we also have Terry O'Brien from Upland is hopefully going to FaceTime in with us. I told her to call at 10 after. So if my cell phone rings, I'm really not being rude and leaving my cell phone on, but we're hoping, I don't really, I try with technology. I hope I can make this. I hope I can make that FaceTime work. Maybe some of you that are more apt at it could help me with it if she calls. Paul's back there ready to answer. And so we'll have Terry joining in via FaceTime, I hope. Mm-hmm. And then, so Marie, other than, I'd like to start with introductions, if we could do that.
Certainly.
Around the table, and your name, and where are you from, and what your teaching context is. So maybe I could ask Terry to start, because she's from Bayshore Prep, which is a charter school down in San Diego. So maybe you could tell us just a hint about your charter school and your context. Anything about your context in VISA would be helpful for us. For example, I know that Melissa has been full-time relief and working with lots of VISA teachers for lots of years. So that something like that might be useful for the group to know. Others of you, Beth has been full-time in the classroom forever, and then VISA is a full-time relief. I mean, as a full-time in the classroom support provider model. So I think we have a lot of representation around the table from various models. So just take a couple of minutes, and we'll go ahead, and if my phone rings, we'll see if we can include Terry.
Okay. I'm Jody Miller. I'm with Bayshore Prep Charter School in San Marcos, which is in northern San Diego County. This is my third year as a support provider. I am the lead teacher at our school, high school teacher actually. We have a total teaching staff of 6, so that's part of the challenge that I wanted to come and talk about. I have had participating teachers in math and social studies. So.
Hi everybody, I'm Michelle Astley. I'm from Redlands Unified, and I've been a support provider for over 7 years, I think. I went from full-time relief, supporting up to 40 teachers my last year, to now I'm back teaching full-time again, and last year I supported 5 teachers teaching full-time.
Wow.
And I teach middle school, and I teach PE, which is super fun, grade 6, 7, and 8. So yeah, I really enjoy it. I really do miss the full-time release part of it, because I was able to get to all of my participating teachers more effectively, I guess. It's working. Melissa Creasy, Al Ward, and I am full-time relief. Used to be 3 of us. We would carry like 28 in the good years. I'm the only one now, and last year I had 19. So I don't know. I thought that was a lot. I'm hoping maybe for like 10 this year. I'm hoping that I'll even have 10, but. And I think it's 6 or 7 years.
Good morning. My name is Gus. I work for Norton. That's a charter school in San Bernardino. I'm going my 5th year as a business support provider. It's a small growing school. We're hiring actually because we roll out a grade every year. Ever since I started there, I've had 3 support providers while teaching full-time. This last year I had 2, and it made a big difference. Yeah, I really felt like last year was the most effective. It's the year I had, so I don't know what that means, but
Hi, I'm Florence Hinckley. I retired last year from the Colton Joint Unified School District. I did support provider for them while teaching full-time for 8 years. I worked with 2 or 3 beginning teachers each of those 8 years. Then last year I worked under Princess Solomon with the county supporting 5 teachers in charter schools. So one of the charter schools that I was working with had a maximum of 4 teachers. So I'm kind of in your school situation. And then the other one was a high school with several more, but maybe 12 maximum teachers. So 1 year as a retired support support provider on the side.
My name is Jessica McDonald. I am a full-time teacher in San Jacinto Unified. I teach at the high school social studies. I have been a support provider for 7 years now. Generally, my district just gives us 1, maybe 2 PTs per year. So the most I've ever had is 2. I really enjoy it, actually. I started out as a participating teacher myself, and then my 3rd year I moved into becoming a support provider. I'm the department chair also, so I'm kind of working with these new teachers anyway, so it's just a logical procession.
Hi, I'm Kathy Steele from Apple Valley. I'm the district liaison for Apple Valley. I'm a teacher on assignment currently. I've been with BITSA since 1989, so I've had quite a bit of experience with how it's changed. And because I'm the district liaison, I get to do the assigning, and so I try not to assign more than 1 or 2 to any of our support providers, so that because they're all full-time teachers, they just need their time in the classroom as well. It's just hard to be out in the classroom and take care of more teachers than that. So it's working well so far, and we are beginning to hire more and get back. We've gone down to where we were only having high school teachers, 2 or 3, and now we're beginning to get some more multiple subjects again. So we're being able to bring a lot of those support providers back, so it's good.
Last year, Kathy said over and over again, teacher. Okay, Kathy, well, keep coming. You know, sure.
It ended up with 14.
Yeah.
Big change. Yeah.
I'm Elaine Mossman, also from Apple Valley, and I can't even remember how many years. Kathy was my support provider and said, "You're coming." So it's been a long time, and I've had 1 to 2. 2, I think, has been math. I don't think I ever had 3. And last year I had 1. I teach 1st grade, and my teacher last year taught preschool special ed. So it was a real eye-opener. I got lots of education from her.
Jan Clark George, retired educator. I have half my career in multiple subjects and the other half in special ed. And let's see, I had 1 participating teacher last year that was worth 10.
Oh dear.
We'll put it that way.
She was teaching in a prison.
Oh, tough.
It was interesting. Anyway.
I'm Carol Monterosian. I'm a retired teacher. I was 31 years in the classroom, 14 in LA, 17 in Val Verde, New Barbara.
Carol and I were calling.
And now, so I don't have other, responsibilities. So I enjoy doing business. I enjoy doing the support. So I do the private pay through the church schools. So the Baptist and the Good Shepherd School this last year.
My name is Beth Breens, and I teach middle school in the Val Verde School District, and I think I've been a support provider for 13 plus years, a lot of years. But I've always been full-time in the classroom, and I've always had like 1 to 3 participating teachers in that time.
And I'm Jeannie Gahagan. I'm a program manager for Satellite One, and that's in the greater Riverside area. So my capacity here is just to assist Marie, and I'm going to be watching our time.
Now, I've also asked Jeannie to first signal. I'm allowing 15 minutes per question. Now, that is a flexible rule. So if we're really digging into a topic and learning a lot about what matters and about how the program can be improved, then I'm going to go over that time, because what really matters is learning about your perspectives and your experiences and how we can apply that knowledge to make the program better for the participating teachers and for you as support providers. So 15 minutes per question, general rule, but with flexibility if we have a lot to say about that topic. Jeannie is going to help us sort out if we've got a lot of people who want to answer right away. So she's going to be calling on people. And one of the reasons why that is important is because I am tape recording, and I want to make sure that I get what you say right. And if we have overlapping talk, I lose all of that talk. It is impossible to transcribe. So it's really important that we kind of attend to rules of order, raise our hands, speak in turn, and let's see, what else? Oh, yes. Another thing that I'm going to be looking for is there kind of a consensus? If somebody says something significant, does everybody agree? It's tape recorded, so it's not going to take in the head nods. So I need you to vocalize if you agree or disagree. Let's see. And what else do you need to know about this? The emphasis in this interview is on your relationship with your participating teacher. How do you make that relationship?
We can quickly pause for just 1 second.
Sure.
We have Terry here. This is Terry O'Brien.
Hi,
from
Terry.
Upland. Terry, this is the group. So I'm gonna leave you with Melissa over here, and I want you to feel free to interject whenever you'd like to. Okay? Technology.
Oh, goodness.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
The group is starting, so I'm going to turn the phone back around.
Okay, so back to the emphasis of this interview. It's on your relationship with your participating teacher. And one of the things that we know is that these relationships, while there are some expectations for the relationship, it's also very individualized, right? And the strategies that you bring to that relationship are strategies that you've developed through your years of practice. And we want to know about that. We want to have a sense of what works for you so that we have an array of strategies that we can share with new teachers. The other thing that we'd like to think about is there are different tools and resources that we use. For example, our formative assessment system, FACT. It can be a wonderful thing, and it can also be challenging. So I'd like to learn from you how you negotiate working with FACT and with your participating teacher. Same with RBO. So before I plunge into the questions, do you have any questions for me?
No, I just have one comment.
Sure.
I'm hearing impaired, so if I can just ask everybody to speak up really loud, I'll turn my hearing aids up.
That would be great because it'll also help the tape recorder.
And Terry, can you hear?
I'm going to have to put my hearing aids on too.
It's too bad it's not closed caption for you.
It would be better to be for closer to
Wonderful. I'm going to find the battery for it.
She's serious. Terry, I'm going to put you in the center of the table also, so you'll be looking up at the ceiling, but we'll be able to see you. Okay, then here we go.
Okay, so what we're starting with is kind of a contextual question to get you basically what we call a grand tour question. So to get you started talking about how you work with your participating teacher. So if you could describe a typical meeting with your participating teacher when you're working on an IIP. So what is, when you step into the room from there until your conclusion, what's a typical meeting like?
Okay, I'll go first.
Michelle?
She said she'd go first.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'll think back to my teachers this past year, and I have 2 second year and 1 first year. Typically, we meet after school, and when I go in, I try, first of all, to make sure that they're at ease. I'm not any threat whatsoever. I'm there as their support and to guide them along and answer any questions that I can. So basically, we usually have a set meeting time that we try and adhere to every week. But I always try and be positive when I go in, and then it just seems to unleash them sometimes because they have a lot of questions that they want to ask. And so we try and get that, and then I try and redirect them and focus them as to how that will go along with what they're doing through, their induction.
Mm-hmm.
I'm done.
Okay. Thank you.
Michelle?
Yes, I agree with everything she just said. I would also like to say that I think developing the PT's trust is really important. So working on that relationship to where they feel comfortable around you, I think is very important initially. When I support the teachers I support, I have every subject area, every grade level. So for me, it's getting in to figure out where their comfort zones are so that I can help to guide them and help them figure out where they want to go with their IIPs. We also in our district are closely aligned, and I'm sure most of you are too, with what our administrative expectations are for those teachers. So we use the continuum as a discussion point and kind of springboard that into where do you see yourself as your strengths and weaknesses. So it kind of breaks the ice, but also lets us talk about some areas that they feel, usually classroom management, my new teachers, where they feel that they'd like to springboard for their IIPs. And it also collaborates with what the admin expectations are. So when I do go in, I can give them another set of eyes that's non-biased, and if anything, it's biased in the direction of supporting them, so that when they have their discussions with their administrators, they can make sure they've already had a practice session or they've worked through some of the things with them. So I think it helps them to feel like the work that they're doing in VISTA, because sometimes they get overwhelmed and then start asking why.
Yeah.
But, it helps support their role, and they can kind of see why they're doing what they're doing.
I was looking down, so I'm sorry.
I think Jessica and then Beth.
One of the things I try and do, not just with the IIP, but with every, I don't even know what they call module, I guess now, is trying to explain the purpose of the entire thing first, because there are a lot of individual boxes, and I think a lot of the PTs just try and do it, like, let's enter in this, and I found if I can explain, okay, this is going to take us a couple months, this is the process, this is the purpose of this whole entire piece, and have that conversation first, it really helps them to contextualize what they're doing. And then I agree also, I try and, our schools have focuses every year. So this year our focus was student engagement and checking for understanding. So I try and sort of guide them into that direction when choosing their IIP focus, because that's what they're going to have to do anyway, so nobody wants this to be more work. And so I kind of look at it also as practice for that important conversation they'll be having later with their administrator. And so I think putting that in that context first helps to get a little more buy-in from the PT, and it helps them along the way.
Thank you. Thanks.
I really don't have too much to add. I think it's pretty typical to what you said. The one thing, though, is I do try at the beginning of each meeting to talk about how are you doing, what's going on. Try to remember to follow up from something they may have told me about the classroom before, a follow-up question, say what happened with, Johnny in this place or whatever, and then transition from those things into fact processes, really working hard to try and make it definitely connected to the classroom and to the experience, and how does this relate to what we're doing now, and then move from there.
I agree. Melissa, and then I'm sorry, I can't see the name. Jody, and then Florence. Right. Thank you.
I just wanted to add about spending time in the continuum. I think is really helpful, and I think that's just a great place for them to really think about their strengths and weaknesses. And then when it comes to writing that question, that focus question, I love that book that we were given. Then you pull up the standard, and it has just that sentence starter with all of those. They're great, and so I really find them really looking in there. And before I thought it was like that was one of the parts I hated, was helping them develop that question. And now I really like it because it's there, and they'll do so much of that processing, and then it's really something meaningful to them because they'll just kind of tweak that frame to something that really fits for them during that whole module, and I really appreciate that book.
Which book is that, Michelle? I'm sorry.
It's that blue book. It has all the standards in there, and then when you pull up the one they want to work on, I don't know what it's called.
The CSDP book. The CSDP.
Yeah, and that's the one with the sample questions that go with each standard. Yeah, that's valuable.
Thank you. Jody?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to what Jessica was saying. In the initial meeting with the participating teachers, I like to give them an overview, kind of let them see the big picture of what's going to be going on. Because I think initially they feel really overwhelmed, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have all this stuff to do this year. So if you let them know that it's over the course of the full school year, and we're going to break it into chunks, and let them see, that it is a process that takes a whole year. It seems to be helpful to them.
Thank you. Florence?
I just wanted to add with regards to working on the IIP, I tend to forget the action plan or that first IIP page as we're developing the lesson plan and the unit and going through the assessments and all of that. So I try to remember to call their attention back to the IIP at that actual page 1 and look at the action plan. How are you progressing on the things that you said you were going to research and find out information on? How can we pull that into what you're doing in the classroom right now? And are we answering the inquiry question? So I try to tie that in with the actual process that we're going through.
One of the things I kind of changed this year was we do or die. We met every Friday after school, and we would talk about what was doable by the next meeting. So I would say, what do you think we can complete by next meeting? And they would agree on certain boxes, on more research. I would put it into the support doc in order for all of us to remember. So I really had that open there, ready to go. One of the other things that I know it'll come up later, the biggest consumption of time for my experience was the continuum, along with, especially for year 1, that whole idea of what a good inquiry question is, like you were mentioning, and a measurable outcome. And I went in knowing those, if we don't have a good inquiry question and a good measurable outcome, you can forget about IIP. So I knew that going in, and I purposely set aside like 2 or 3 days just to talk about that. And I think as a provider, sometimes we want to see more stuff on the RDO, and we don't, I had to let go that the discussion is all the foundational work for all the RDO stuff. And I realized that 3 inquiries, there's a reason to have 3 inquiries, because even after a whole first year, like I realized as a new teacher, everything is new. And I thought, they need time to really, even I did see that they still had a lot of questions about the inquiry at the end of it, but I said, it's okay, you still have 2 more next year.
Right.
And they're really jazzed about them next year, so I think my experience was just realizing that they're not going to get all the nooks and crannies, but they understand why they do what they do in itself.
So it sounds like in the first year, you're really focusing on them understanding the inquiry process.
Exactly, and the impact it has on their personal, because I kept saying, this is for you, this is your, because they kept worrying about whether they were doing it right or wrong.
Okay,
And I had to let that go, and I said, this is all a reflection, like it's all the cycle that we talked about, that and I told them, you'll never let that go. Every teacher, veteran teacher, always goes through that cycle, like you're always constant, or you should. So it was a learning process for me as well as for them.
Yeah.
One more thing I'd like to add. May I?
Yes.
I like the fact that with my teachers, they see that this process is every year. It's something that will be going on the rest of their teaching career. They're always striving to do more, to refine their craft, to come up with, and they're always searching. They're lifelong learners. So I think this process, while I know I don't hear nearly as many complaints as I used to, and I think they see the value in it.
Good.
Thank you.
Any more comments for this question?
Can I just make a real quick one?
Sure.
I think the use of the RBO with the status report and the skills that show up and the support service laws is important for them. We look at it all the time. It's kind of a progress thing. It's like, oh boy, I got here, and I'm going to go there. And that works with people. Some people need to see the motorcycle taken apart and put together, and some people just want to see the parts before they put it together. So it depends on the style of the person, and I always kind of go with their style,
And I'm just going to add one more thing about what, I don't know who's on the phone, I forget her name. Terry, sorry.
Terry O'Brien.
Yeah, okay, good. She mentioned that, she said at the end that they have to see the value in it, and I think one of the things that as support providers we have to do is believe that. I realize that, and I know it's easy to fall into like, oh, you got to carry your credential, this and that. But like I mentioned, you only have 2 years, you're never going to do this again. I said, so, and it actually benefits me to kind of continuously look at my practice. And it's easy to just kind of fall into the complaint mode. So I think like we have to be the cheerleaders for that, because I'll have fellow PTs that will kind of they don't have that, and it's easy to kind of fall into that, to fall into that mentality that they just gotta get rid of this, and so while we're doing it, we as support providers, we have to see the value in it as well.
Yeah.
That was a head nod.
I agree.
Okay. What strategies do you have, in addition to what we've already talked about, do you have any specific strategies that you might use to support your PT through this process? For example, some support providers rely heavily on questioning strategies to help their new teacher express what they're thinking. Jen?
Well, my companion and I have developed a survey we call it a match survey, and it's for the PTs and also for the support providers. Two different types of surveys. And the purpose of the survey for the participating teacher is to find out what their background is, specifically. So in other words, if they are kindergarten and they've had preschool as a parent, they volunteered at preschool, that's valuable. Or, just any type of experience at all, paid or volunteer, doesn't matter.
And what the types of things that they feel, what else is on there? I've spaced it out. Let's see. Credentials and certificates that they have already. Because sometimes the trend seems to be for a regular ed teacher, multiple subject, to now go into special ed to have more opportunity for a job. So that's valuable information to know that they've got that background, because it used to be a requirement before you went to become a special ed teacher to have a minimum of 2 years in a regular ed classroom. But they've dropped that. So, but we want to know the background, okay? And any unusual challenges that they've had in their experiences that they maybe needed help with. If they did, how did they handle it? What are their questions? This type of thing. And let's see. Outside responsibilities. For example, if they just had a new baby. That's big. Or if they're taking classes at the university, in addition to being a brand new teacher and having a new baby.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I've come across. Anyway, so these surveys are just drafts. They're just ideas that we came up with together over at meetings.
And have you actually used them yet?
No, these are all
worked them out over quiche at meetings.
I'd be very interested in hearing how this works out as you implement it, certainly. Okay.
Well, it's a wonderful.
Sounds like a great idea.
Can I interject? The purpose of this is that after you've been matched by your agency, then you would use this with one another as a tool for getting to know one another better. Great idea.
Yeah, hit some key points.
Michelle, just to go along with what you both have done, I've done something similar just as an interest survey with my PTs, because our matches and Redmores aren't always ideal, because I have to sometimes take the teachers that are all over the spectrum. I want them to understand that I can still help them even though my credential's not in math, and that really helps. So I hope that you find it as useful as I found the one that I've done. I put a lot of similar ideas on it, and the teachers really, it helps me if I know I need to stay away from them on Wednesdays because they have to go to college right after class.
Or
I think
coach soccer.
Yeah, and it helps them feel like you care, and it's not just get this done, get this done, get this done.
Well, and in situations where the match, at least on the surface, doesn't look like it matches, how does this help you manage that problem? What do you take away from it? Could you give me an example, perhaps, of what you've done in a case where there hasn't been a good, necessarily the best match?
Right. I let them know that good teaching is good teaching, and I'm there to help be their cheerleader, and I'm sure we all are, to shine the light on how well they're doing and help them work through their problem areas. Specifically, math is my weakest area, and I'm very upfront with that. And I had a trigonometry teacher last year, and I was very honest. So I said, you could be writing hieroglyphics on the board, and we really wouldn't know. So, I would go in and I allowed him release time. I went and subbed for him a couple of days when I got my days for big stuff. And that was fun. But I would go in and step in so that he could go watch a stellar teacher on his campus.
Oh, okay.
It empowered him, and it empowered the other teachers. Wow, that this person that knows me as an ex-FITS, a support provider, because it was teachers I had supported in the past. And it helped him with that culture of that school, plus with his curriculum needs.
Okay. So what you did basically was you facilitated opportunities for him to learn from experienced math teachers.
Rather than assuming that I would be all-knowing, which isn't the case. We all learn from each other.
None of us are.
Right. But I didn't want my participating teacher at all to think that that's how I was acting.
Right.
That's why these are so important.
Yeah. Make that explicit up front.
Right.
Yeah. Great. Anybody else? Strategies?
One of the strategies I use, I was thinking about what we do in the classroom, what I do with proximity. And what I did was I purposely visited their classrooms just out of the blue. At least, I tried to do it every 2 or 3 weeks. On top of our regular meetings, just to come in. And I have the advantage that we're all at the same school site. One of them is just 2 portables down from me. So on my way, like during recess or lunch, I would just pop in and just say, how's it going? And they were a little surprised. I would notice they assume that every time I'm going to go in, I'm going to do something. And I was just like, no, I'm just here just to enjoy your classroom environment, or if you need anything. So I did that purposely this year, and it just, it really affected, I think, the relationship more than anything, towards it being much more positive. Even though we have a positive relationship because we know each other, they've been students, they were instructionalists before they became teachers. But I noticed that that stress was like they were slowly releasing it. They were just kind of like, okay, by the end they knew like it shouldn't be stressful at all, it should be enjoyable.
Yeah, it takes time and repeated experiences before you feel safe teaching in front of somebody else. That's not a comfortable thing to do.
That was Gus.
Right.
Hi, and to piggyback off of Michelle, and I'm not sure this is actually a strategy, but I found new teachers are so overwhelmed with all their responsibilities. And specifically, my teacher this year, she had to leave right after school because she taught night school as well, and she lived 2 hours away, so she didn't have a lot of extra time. And so to tell a teacher, go and research and read about engagement and she's not going to have time to do that. So I reached, and I would send her an article and say, okay, this is the article that I think that you should read. We'll talk about it. If you need follow-up, I will take care of that. My school this year allowed release time for teachers to do walkthroughs. So I signed her and I up together, and together we spent half a day. We walked through the school, and then together we talked about it. So for me, it was, instead of saying these are things you need to do, I'm going to do these things, you come along. And sort of, she had the conversation, she talked about it, but really I was the one that had facilitated all of it.
That's going to have like the tape recorder.
Go ahead.
Were you finished?
I got that. Thank you. Just a little bit, please. I have the privilege and pleasure of being retired, so my time is theirs. Whenever they need me, I'm there. And I've even had them over to my house on Saturday afternoon so we could finish up. So they knew I was really there for them. And I think that's very important for them to know. And I tweaked and worked as much as I could, like you, to make it easy for them. I know all about it. They didn't know much about it. So I kind of smoothed it. That's important.
Well, but one of the questions that I do have for that, because there's a bit of, we've got a tension here between, the time and the learning. And we do have to mitigate the challenges that they encounter, certainly, so that they can do this work, but at the same time they also need to know how to do it independently. So they may not know how to find this article, so how do you kind of bridge that?
I bring them sources. I brought them web sources that I knew about. To supplement the curriculum, which wasn't strong in a certain area. I gave them sources.
We worked with Marzano Strategies for Work, and so we have the actual book, but she's not going to sit there and read the whole. So I would direct her to, look at this chapter, this portion of this book, and then we'd have the conversation. She had follow-up questions. Well, let's read this part now because you have a follow-up question.
So you guided her through it.
But, just to expect her to go and pick up this book and to know where to read when she's got so much, it's not going to happen.
Right, I agree.
Thank you, Michelle, and then Melissa.
I agree, and I also, something I've noticed since our district has changed structures from full-time release to independent support providers, new support providers that don't understand this whole process that we're talking about and helping them through and how to research and how to be a support provider that filters for them, really does affect the relationship with the PT to the point where you will have one PT in a district saying, oh my gosh, this is horrible, I don't want to ever have to live through this again, to I think some other teachers that actually will say, I really felt like even though I was doing a lot of work, they still see it as work sometimes, that I still felt like I was supported and my support provider helped me because they see that you're trying to relieve that pressure. So for new support providers to get their proper training and hear this, it's so important. I think it's invaluable for the relationship they have with their PT.
Right. Like I said, it is definitely guiding them and supporting them and facilitating their work with fact really makes a huge difference. And I had a conversation with Barb once about how, well, it's okay for them to feel a certain amount of discomfort with fact because we're pushing them to learn, and that's uncomfortable. And then when I was working on my dissertation, you should have heard me complain. But it was a transformative experience, and it was worth every bit of suffering that was involved. Let's see. Anybody?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is there another?
Yeah, Melissa had a comment.
Oh, thank you.
I was just going to say that I think another great resource that we were given was the Doug Lamov book, and likewise, you're saying with Marzano, they don't necessarily have time to review those 49 techniques, but especially if it was tied to an area on an IIP that they wanted to work on, I could research that and provide additional information or training or assistance, or let me come back in and help you monitor for the results that you're looking for, because you're just one pair of eyes. I can provide more information that of things that are going on, and so just making yourself available.
Yeah, Beth and then Gerald.
When I hear you say that, Melissa, I feel a little guilty because I'll be honest, I don't do a lot of the research for them. And that might be a plus on the side of a full-time release, that, when you do that, you can share that with a lot of the other folks. I think for me, I kind of judge the way that the PT works. For instance, this past year, she was just finishing her master's, extremely bright. Things like the lesson planning and answering what is the whole unit plan going to look like. She was perfectly capable of doing that on her own, and we would just go back and review what she'd put in there. And we spent a lot more time on the continuum. I still call it the DOP. I know it's not called that anymore, but I'm lost in that name. But anyhow, that's where we spent a lot of our discussion, was on what those things looked like. But hearing you say that, I think maybe full-time release is the way to go.
Yeah. That's the part I miss about being full-time.
Yeah. There are strengths to each approach.
Thank you. And
Quickly, I think the induction support sessions, is that what they're called, Barb, that they do outside, are very supportive for them, especially when it's the special POPs or the EL, because they can put that in their action plan on their IIP, and they feel there's more information that they can bring in and use. So we always talked about those after they attended.
thank you.
I'll just interject that I don't think you have to be a full-time release support provider to be able to support by providing resources. I know that our district adopted the EDI direct instruction model, and I thought there were some good things from the book that we were given that I could share with my PTs outside of my district that I had last year, and so I did. We come across things just as the teachers that might be valuable for the PTs, and so I think that is something that we can share. We don't have to have that release time to be able to do some of that research and fine-tune the things that we point in there, put them in the direction.
Yeah. Well, and when you have a situation where you have rich knowledge and experience, sometimes you can just pull that knowledge out of your hat and know where to direct that person. So I am, as I tell Barb all the time, a both-and person. Some circumstances, one model works particularly well, and with some people, in other circumstances, another model works particularly well. It depends. Any additional comments as far as the strategies you use? Okay, how are we doing time-wise? Are we over time on this one?
No, we're about right on.
Sweet. Okay. So, the next question has to do, again, with dilemmas and tensions. Oftentimes, fact is intended to be a structure that guides and supports your work. through having a frame for conducting your inquiry, for having the reflective conversations. But at the same time, it's also part of a credentialing process, and the paperwork does have to get done. So there's a little bit of a tension in there, especially when the new teachers are really pressed for time. So the next two questions are going to be about how do you manage the conversations that you have with them that can be very rich, and also finding time to actually dig into the forms and write down that information. So the first one is, under what circumstances is it most appropriate in your circumstance, knowing that everybody has a different set of needs? For in your circumstance, when is it best or most appropriate to ask the participating teachers to work on FACT or RBO by themselves? So you've had a meeting, you've had a productive conversation, there are sections of the documents that need to be completed, reflections that need to be done. When is it best to say, you know, why don't you do this on your own time, and then we'll come back at the next meeting and maybe review? When do you do that?
Yeah. I would follow up on, what Gus said. It really depends on the PT. Looking ahead what needs to be done, and then ask the question, what do you feel comfortable doing on your own, and what do you think, is best if we do it together? And, I've had both. Sometimes they need me to help them fill everything out, and sometimes there's portions they're very comfortable with and they want to send it to me and I can look it over and we might email questions back and forth. I would say the only one that we pretty much do together is that continuum of practice. But then the rest of it, it really depends on the PT and how comfortable they are with doing the work. And then sometimes, if I look it over and I think, I'm not quite getting it, I might give them more, assistance. But I don't want to assume they can't do things on their own. Especially these folks that have just come out of teacher training. Most of them are very, very well capable of doing some of this work on their own, and they prefer to.
Thank you. Gus, and then Florence.
And the other side of that is I can't, because I totally agree, I know they're competent, but what I found is I cannot assume that they're going to give the right answers or the more elaborate answers, or just their thought processes. And what I've done is, in our case, we do preview all the questions, make sure you kind of understand what they're asking here.
Okay.
And then I allow them to just fill it, answer the questions. What I've seen though is they either give too short of an answer, or the answers are they ramble on and they don't really answer the question. So what I've done is I've told them to give me examples of their classroom practice.
Oh,
I said,
that's a good strategy.
Right, and write it in. I'm like, you have all the answers, you just don't have them written into the RBO. And so I always tell them, if you're stuck, just think for example. I mean, literally type it in, walk away, and then come back to it. Because then it becomes evidence, of your practice. That's helped them kind of, because I think there's so many things that they just like, well, I use technology during my center's times, or I use my Elmo. And I'm like, yeah, but, how does that produce, achievement students? So I told them, can you give them an example of how you do that in your lessons?
Nice.
Thank you, Florence.
I just was thinking about this question and realizing that I've had several different kinds of participating teachers. This last year in particular, one of the charter schools I worked with didn't have internet access, so we couldn't even hook up a computer and type into the RBO as we were talking. So I would, before going to meet with them, I would print off the sheets, so I had the questions there and kind of as a framework for our discussions. And then with one of the teachers, I would take notes as he was talking. you know, and what about this, and what about this, and then I would take notes. And then I would give those things to him after we were finished, and he would enter it into the RBO, and then we looked at it again afterwards. I have had other teachers where they like to talk and they like me to type, you know, and so I've done that. And then there are other teachers that like to do it ahead, and then we review it and add to it at the time. So I think you just have to...
That's going to really make it hard for the transcriber.
I think you just have to kind of go with the flow of what is going to be best for your own particular participating teacher.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I agree with what has been said. Elaine will verify that I am deaf on support providers asking their PTs to sit down and do anything by themselves. That is my mantra. You do not ever just tell them, go fill this out. If they have the discussion ahead of time, I obviously want them to do whatever works for their PT. But I think it's important that the PTs understand this is not a university class. It is not more homework. It is something to help them improve their practice in the classroom. And so it needs to be done together. That it is a collaborative effort, and that's why the support provider is there. And so I think that is, in our district, very important that it's done collaboratively.
So what does it mean when it's done collaboratively? Do they sit side by side and talk it through and enter it at the same time? Is that
that's up to the PT, SPPT. In my particular instance, I had 2 this year.
Okay.
One liked to do a lot of talking, and I took notes, and I entered most of it on my own. The other one wanted to talk and write it herself as we did it.
Okay.
But it was all talked through together. It wasn't something, go and fill this out.
Yeah, and I have to say, having a space to talk and think aloud through a reflection really has a significant effect on the quality of that reflection and on what the thinker takes away in the end. So that's an important way of working through a problem.
Thank you. Carol, I'm almost just like you. I had 2 of the most opposite PTs this year that I've ever had in my 7 years. One did it on her own, and I respected that. I'd see her every week for 30 minutes. There was the work. We discussed phone and email. The other one was my special pop student. I sat next to her every time, every week for at least hour and a half, and she wanted to know, was this coming into her or was this going out? That was her style of thinking. So I would explain, this is something that you're thinking about or whatever. And so it depends on the person you're working with. And you have to figure that out when you meet them.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you.
And when you mentioned what does it mean collaboratively, and I was thinking about, since I have 2 and they're very close in grade, kinder first, last year, and we would meet together, we would go over some of the questions of conversation starters and so forth. And they needed time, so what I did was, talk to each other, and I actually walked away. Like I went and finished. I said, I'll give you about 2 minutes, 3 minutes to kind of just hash it out, and then we'll regroup. Because I kind of, again, I didn't want to give them the answers.
Right.
It's really easy to do that. And plus I wanted, to see their thought process. And it just really made a big difference in the quality of their responses and just their kind of grasping about what they're doing with RBO or with the inquiry. And then I would come back and then I said, okay, so let's talk about it. And they just felt more sure of their answers.
Right.
And what they were actually trying to look for in the process.
Right. That's a very nice strategy.
Thank you. Others?
Okay. Let's see, it's 10 o'clock. We've been at this for an hour. Barbara, what are your thoughts about breaks?
I think a break might be good. Coffee break, potty break.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to stop.
We give. Anyway.
Can you repeat that question, Barbara? I know I always benefit from repetition. I think that was just jumping right in there.
The question is, the feedback from the reviewers was that a number of participating teachers reported they were left in isolation to do their SAC work on the RDO. How can we better address that with support providers so that they are doing what you're doing, which is engaging them in a meaningful dialogue, and then perhaps going back and writing some of that in without, it's not the expectation that you're going to do it all for them, but on the other hand, it's also not the expectation, here, fill this out and come back and we'll check it off. So, anyway, all right. Press the pause button there.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Thank you. So returning to the concern.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I was going to restate your question, but since you're here, yes, you do. Because we're starting after a break, and everybody's been chatting, so.
Well, my question is, as we address the concern of the reviewers that teachers are left to do their work in isolation, how can we address that with support providers? Some of the things that you're sharing as suggestions, I think that just hearing that, but what ideas do you have for us to address that specifically?
Like in a workshop.
In training, yes. But even like Jan and I were talking about her survey, which Sonia made copies for you. You got it. Okay, good. Inventory. I love that. Inventory. Good. Are there something that we can put in place that will really set the stage? So that's kind of I'm rambling.
I saw Kathy and Florence. So Kathy first.
I think that as a way of training, mentioning this at the DL meetings, and then the DLs, as they're leading their support provider meetings, that is a way to get to the support providers. So I would do it at our DL meetings.
What is a DL meeting?
Oh, I'm sorry, the district liaison get together 4 times a year. And usually the district liaisons are the ones who coordinate. I shouldn't assume. In our district, as district liaison, I coordinate the support providers and the participating teachers. And so I have contact with both SPs and PTs and keep my finger on what is going on. I try to get into the participating teachers' classrooms once every few weeks so that I know what's going on in their classrooms, and then I talk with the support providers. So I know from both ends if there are problems on either end. If someone is saying, no, I'm not getting the support, or someone else, the support provider, is saying, no, we're not getting the work done, then I can facilitate whatever needs to be done to make things happen. And so maybe district liaisons are not familiar with the need to get out there and talk to their support providers.
Thank you, Florence.
I just have maybe 2 or 3 things to comment on this question. I think the first thing, whoever makes the matches in Colton District was the PAR committee that was made up of the union and the district liaison. But whoever makes the matches, if there's a way of making a match so that the support provider and the PT are close in proximity so that there's not a lot of drive time, it facilitates being able to get together for FaceTime a lot more easily. Also, when I had 3 PTs and was a full-time teacher, that was really pushing it on time to be able to adequately meet with those teachers once a week. I know that Barbara has had the presenters like Melissa emphasize that the ideal that we're shooting for, that we want you to do, is to meet personally with your PT once a week. And so what has worked for me with that is at the beginning of the year, I say, okay, I have these days available. Which one would you like to choose as our meeting day each week? And I will come to you, or sometimes you can come to me. But we will get together and we will meet personally and have a good hour or an hour and a half together to talk, to work through things that you're encountering in your classroom, and then get the process of VIPSA done. And so I think that it starts first at the district level where the PTs and the SPs are assigned, that we need to try to make the close proximity, because there was one PT that I had clear across on the other side of the district, and I was at this end and the other one was up, and Colton is a big district. And so the drive time was hard there. And then 3 is really a lot if you're a full-time teacher. So limiting it to 1 or 2 if you're a full-time teacher, I think, from my experience, would be best. If you're a release time teacher, of course, then they can take on more. Or if you're retired like I am now, then I can take on more. But to be able to adequately service the PTs with personal face time once a week, I think 1 or 2 is the ideal match. And then just set up that schedule, because if you don't have an appointment, it's not going to happen, or it's really hard for it to happen. And if you have a consistent appointment, okay, your day is Monday, your day is Tuesday, or whatever, then you're able to have a few days for flexibility. If something comes up, then you can reschedule. But if you have that set appointment, it makes it easier to get that face time in.
Thank you, Florence. To Beth?
I was just going to ask the question, I'm sorry, I can't. Kathy. Is that your full position as district liaison for the support provider program, the VIPSA program?
No, that's just one of the things I do.
I thought, because I think in most districts they wear several hats, and that probably determines it. To be honest, I know we've talked about this question before. I don't think this is a county issue, because I don't think it's that we haven't heard this over and over again at our trainings.
Well, Beth was trained by me, and
I agree with you that this comes down to a district issue. And I feel for the DLs, because they do have to wear so many different hats. But I think it is something that comes down to a particular thing with the district liaison knowing with each of their support providers how much face time, they're being given. I had an ideal situation this year. The person I was a support provider for taught right across the pod from me. We were both teaching middle school language arts. We talked every single day. Not all of that went on my, support provider log. But, I've heard this over and over again about some people, and yet they keep coming back and being support providers year after year after year. Well, that's a district issue, and I think that's something that they need to address at that level.
I agree.
Yes, so I'm hearing Kathy and Beth both say that a lot of this is related to district leadership.
Thank you, Gus. And then Jody.
And I have 2 things. First of all, I need to know what alone means. So, like from the participating teachers, alone can mean a lot of things. Like it can mean maybe that they don't see each other face to face, but then maybe they do, and then the PT says, okay, you're on your own RBO. So does alone mean, like, what does it mean? I think maybe a survey to maybe year 2s, because obviously this was information from year 1s and 2s that they extracted in this process, auditing process or whatever it was. And so maybe they could tell us, like, what is it exactly that they need. Maybe we'll find different things. Maybe some want you to be there collaborative while you're typing in RBO. Maybe they just need more support. I don't know, because to me that kind of concern is very broad.
Right.
I think once we know, I mean, we have four meetings a year with the participating support providers, and maybe at that point they can say, oh, well, these are the issues they really want you, that they feel they need you a little bit more. At those meetings, maybe a questionnaire, how many times have you met? To make us maybe more accountable towards that. So I think both of the sides are kind of, we need to figure out what is it you need. Because I remember as a support participating teacher, I didn't know what I needed. I just felt like, I don't know. And so it was easy to make a broad kind of stroke of statement, but not give an exact example. And I think they do know what they want, but they just don't have like maybe the platform to fill it out or to state it.
Well, and I'm even wondering if some of this tool, is there a way to get it, a bit of that between SP and PT right out the gate?
Well, can't they do like a survey, like on RBO?
Well, and yes, and we actually have that planned for next year.
Like the first day, log in and voila, here you go. And they could just type in, like maybe there's 4 options that they can click on and prioritize.
Well, and I honestly don't think that asking them, okay, to what extent do you want to work independently on RBO, to what extent do you want me to support you, I don't think that can be planned, because each section, it builds progressively, it requires reflection, it requires critical thinking about your classroom practice. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to dig into, well, when is it sensible for them to work on RBO? And when I say RBO, what I really mean is online fact. They're the same thing, just different platforms.
But is that what they feel they are alone at?
Yes, the complaint that we've been receiving, correct me if I'm wrong, Barb?
That was my understanding from what the review
is that basically some support providers have basically said, okay, we've talked, here's RBO, go home and do it. It's been assigned as homework, in a sense. And as I said before, I'm kind of a both and person. There are times when it would be sensible for the participating teacher to work on RBO in the privacy of their own home, their classroom, their study, whatever. That would probably be something that the participating teacher and support provider would need to figure out. When would it be appropriate for them to do it separately? When would it be appropriate to work collaboratively on it? Which gives us actually to the next question. The first question...
Sorry to interrupt, but we did have Michelle. Before you, I missed Michelle. So it's Michelle to Jody to Beth, if they still wanted to...
And Terry.
And Terry. Okay, and Terry. Okay, if they still want to comment on that.
It's something that over the last 7 years our district has drastically changed from different models of support and different DLs, and it's something that at the end of this last year I really lost a lot of sleep over, because I want the BITSA process for our teachers to be really productive. And I think it kind of echoes what everybody's saying, with a couple of exceptions. Since this whole process is supposed to be formative and we aren't supposed to always be going back and looking at things that we can tweak, I definitely believe that has to be a team effort with the consortium administrators talking to the DLs about having frequent meetings like we do with our follow-up meetings, having meetings with the support providers, having initial training with the support providers, whether they're revisiting or whether they're brand new, because I think what we're finding, at least what I've seen in our district, is that some new support providers feel like they're inadequately prepared to help their teachers. And so we end up on the side helping each other, but yet not wanting to talk about it as a group format, which I think would be very effective. And I think because our DLs are starting to wear so many hats at so many different levels, those things kind of slip through the cracks. But because this is a process that has to be completed, and we want our teachers to feel supported, I think it's so important that our DLs understand at the district level that they do have to have these meetings. They do have to choose their support providers wisely, because you sometimes get the DL wanting to make sure that a support provider only has one teacher or two teachers, but yet somebody like myself, I've been doing it for so long, I really feel like I can adequately handle the 5 people that I have. I get release time to go see those people and do what I need to do with them. It's not as perfect as it was when I was a full-time release teacher, but there are some situations, I think, and everything's dependent on the PT, but I think some support providers are doing it just to excite them. And I hate to say that out loud, but I speak my heart. And that should be a filtering process for our DLs. Are they right for the job? And I think that we should make sure that that's important and our DLs understand that from you at the top level, so kind of the upside-down pyramid approach. And then making sure that our DLs do talk with our support providers frequently. It doesn't have to be every week, but maybe 3 times a year at least, similar to the DL meetings you have with REMS-BITSA. And then making sure our site administrators know the expectations of BITSA. A lot of our site administrators have never been through BITSA, think of it as a thorn in their side, and get angry at teachers that need to go to a training. And then the teachers are intimidated, and then you as a support provider have to go in and fight the fight for the teacher to help them understand. So I think at principal meetings, the administrators need to share the expectation, share the importance and the value of BITSA so that it goes from top down and everybody understands it's effective. And I don't mean to ramble, but for me, I've been taking notes on this and I've been thinking about it because I think in order for everybody to not feel isolated, in addition to the PTs, I think everybody needs to understand the role and expectation in a supportive environment.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Jody?
Yes, that was a lot of great information, so it's kind of difficult to add on to that, but I went through the BITSA process 13, 14 years ago as a PT myself, and I think the nature of a traditional classroom, teachers are isolated, and as a first-year teacher, I felt incredibly isolated. I had another PT on site with me, but our support provider was off-site, and I think it's really important to have that proximity. Right now, I have the luxury of all of us being under one roof. Our DL is also our site administrator. She wears many hats. I have 2 PTs. We're all in the same room. It's a very non-traditional school. It's an independent study-based program. So I see them every day. They have complete accessibility to me, which I think...
That's what we need this data. I apologize.
No problem. Just thinking back on my own experience of going through BITSA, I think having someone on site would have been so important. And if for some reason I had a support provider that I had butted heads with, which I didn't, she was wonderful, but it would have been good to know what's the next step, where do I go if I don't feel like this relationship is working. So for the PTs to know your next step is this. If you don't have a cohesive relationship with your support provider, they do. And I think it's important to know that the support providers aren't in it for the stipend, and that, like myself, as a full-time teacher with a lot of other responsibilities too, 2 PTs is plenty. And I think, maxing out, if it's a teacher on special assignment, then great, they can probably handle a lot more, but...
Well, even then, they might have multiple assignments.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Beth. Gus, you mentioned about what does, alone mean. I guess when I heard that question, what I heard were secondhand stories, and I'm telling you secondhand because I don't know if this is true, not even my own district, but about neighboring districts, PTs that got to the end of the year and had never met their support provider other than emails. Don't know if that's true, but I only heard that through my own PT. So that's what I assumed alone meant, which to me, I don't even know how that happens. Release time I do think is an issue here because funds are getting smaller all the time. It's getting more and more difficult to get into the classrooms. Now, I found at middle school it's easier if the person's on my site because you can get someone to cover one period, which is a lot cheaper. It's hard when you are in an elementary classroom and you have to go to another school to be able to see that. That's part of the problem, I think, in being able to get to the classrooms to actually have those in-class times. And the other thing is, the site administration. I just don't know how much site administrators or even district administrators are really invested and knowledgeable on the whole process. I felt really bad at the end of my school year when we had 4 people complete 2 years of induction and no mention was made until I decided to make mention of the fact that they had completed this. And, this is something that needs to be celebrated and congratulated, and that the administrators weren't even there at the end of the year at the colloquium to support. 4 people on your staff getting through this, I think that's a lot. And I felt like there should have been more site administration assistance, support, to provide the opportunities for that one-on-one.
Can I tag on one more thing too? Michelle, you mentioned earlier you were talking about it. Math is not your area. Mm-hmm. I think subject area is less important, matching PTs and SPs, than the proximity. I think personally the proximity is a lot more important and subject area can be way off.
And that was Jody. Thank you. And Carol.
I've noticed at our last training sessions that support providers have been kind of paired with, more experienced support providers paired with new support providers and giving them some support too. Because they're asking questions. What is this? How are you doing? And all that can't be done in the follow-up sessions. There's a whole lot there. And once we've been through it a few years like we have, I can tell them quickly what all the parts are. So I think that helps too. The support at the follow-up session. The mentor.
Thank you. That's a green from Jan.
Yes.
Anyone else like to? Okay, Scott?
Actually, I think Kathy and then...
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick help. I don't know if you can talk to your administrators or DLs, but we have a monthly meeting with our support providers in Apple Valley. So we stay on top of it that way.
Thank you. And Gus?
And just to carry on what Carol mentioned about the new support providers, one of the things I really appreciated for our district liaison is she emailed all the current support providers to recommend teachers on the staff who we think would be quality support providers. And I found that really intriguing because I did go through each one and said, who has those skills, especially those interpersonal skills. And so I recommended 2, and they're both stellar teachers, and she did select 1 out of the 2, based on not just mine, but I'm sure the 4. So that I thought that was a really neat idea for her to kind of start going out there and looking for other quality support providers to recommend.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I really have to mention this. Okay. I have a question. What do unhappy participating teachers do during the year? Do they have something that, a course that they follow? Or do they wait till the end of the year, like I've heard, and complain about what a horrible time they have? Is there something they can do?
Well, and I think that turning the question around just a little bit, what is your understanding of what participating teachers should do if they're having problems with their support providers? Because we might have a mechanism, but if it's not well understood, then there's no point in having the mechanism. So what is your understanding of what PT should do if there's a problem in the relationship?
I could ask a clarifying question? Sure. Now, is this going on to the next, or are we finishing up with what we were just on?
This is a follow-up to what we were talking about.
Okay.
So I have circled here what the next question in this sequence is. And it's okay because we're in the kind of heart of the matter, and some of the other questions are a little less important than this one.
Okay, because we were at our time for that particular one. So
and I love how she's keeping me on task. This is so great.
That's our charge today.
It is that you're doing it perfectly. Thank you so much.
My question was, what is your understanding of what PTs are to do if they're unhappy with either their support provider or the induction experience in general?
Yeah, and Kathy, I think, was the first one to raise her hand.
I think in every orientation I've been in, it's always mentioned that they can call the Rimspitza office. I always make it very clear to them they have my cell phone number and they are to get in touch with me immediately if they think there is a problem, and it has happened
As district liaison.
as district liaison, and I then try to talk with them, then I go and talk with the support provider, try to work it out if it's something that can be handled, and in one instance I did have to remove a support provider.
Thank you. Mr. Melissa?
I was just going to add, same thing in every orientation. Not only is it mentioned, but I believe Jeannie points them out to where there's actually a form that they can fill out. I don't know that it's ever happened in our district, but I know that they're made aware of that at the orientation.
Okay, I'm sorry, Beth.
My only concern with it is that I think a lot of beginning teachers are told, don't say anything. You know, if you want tenure, do not be a complainer, keep your mouth shut, and just go with the flow. So I'm not sure that everybody understands that this is not maybe one of those things, but it could be. You know, if you're seen as a complainer, that could be a problem. The other hand, maybe some of the participating teachers like being left alone to just get it done and not have to put in that extra time meeting with someone.
There may be a bit of both. Now, when you say they're told, are you referring to perhaps the teacher culture at the school? Okay, yeah.
Thank you. Someone else like to comment?
So does just show of hands, nod, whatever. So is that kind of the understanding that everybody else has, that this is the procedure that you would follow?
I'm saying
Okay.
Okay, yes, you know, I was saying yes.
Okay. So, but there, of course, always are moments when I've certainly encountered them during interviews conducted in spring, and I discovered that there's a participating teacher there who's extremely frustrated because he hasn't met with his support provider or hasn't met enough that they've gotten anything done on that. So there's always that exception, which is such a struggle, because we do our best to get the word out. Now, is there something additional that we could do that could make a difference in getting the word out to those teachers, or is it just a situation where there will always be an outlier?
Kathy?
Once again, if the DL is out there in the classrooms, and that's not my only job. I have lots of jobs. But because they take me into the classrooms, I'm in those classrooms and I know what's going on. And I think that's very important.
So one of the messages that I'm taking away from this conversation is that it seems like there needs to be some work done to clarify and strengthen the DL role.
Jessica?
I agree, and I don't want to throw anybody under the bus here. I've been a support provider for 7 years. I've never once met with my DL. We've never had a support. I've gotten emails at the beginning of the year. I don't even think I do that anymore. Now I get it from the assistant superintendent. This is the person you're matched with, and that's the person I'm matched with, and that's it. And I show up at my support provider meetings, and luckily we haven't had a problem, but the PTs that do have a problem, they're not going to get the answers from their SPs, because that's why there's a problem.
Right.
And if we don't see the district liaison, and I'm sure my PT doesn't even know that we have a district liaison if I don't tell her. And like I said, it's not going to be the SP that meets with the PT isn't going to be the one that has a problem. It's the one that's isolated. And so I think it really goes back to that person.
Thank you.
Michelle, I know this is going
and then Melissa.
By the way, just to give everybody official permission, this is a really important thread of conversation. So I actually do want to pursue this in more depth. So please, hands up, speak up. Michelle.
This is the reason we called you here.
This is it. We're getting to the heart of the matter, and I'm excited.
Piggyback off of Jessica, I think, too, when you have your PTs, and you have to really talk to them about the confidentiality piece, and that you're there as a sounding board, and that they can make mistakes in front of you, the lesson can blow it, and you can just talk it through together and move on from that. It kind of hurts us at the district level because we can't go to that administrator and share a lot of information with what we saw or didn't see at the site level. So our hands are kind of tied as SP. Site administrators, in my experience, kind of go, well, I never see that SP, and, they'll check in at the office sometimes if they're in a hurry to meet my teacher. I never hear what's going on in the classroom, so they're kind of useless to us. So why do we even have VISA? You'll sometimes do that. And it's not because it's not important. It's because they honestly don't understand it, and there's a million things that everybody's trying to do.
So it's not just the DL, but there's this linkage between the support provider, the site administrator, the DL, and the
understanding the value all the way up to the superintendent. And that's just, talking in umbrella terms, because when I first started doing this, we had a director of VISA who did only VISA and human resources. And it was, that person knew it from back to front. And now that everybody's getting spread so thin, including the teachers, important things for these new teachers are starting to slip through the cracks. And to piggyback off of what you were saying about teachers finishing their induction and not getting highlighted, 2 of my teachers last year were at my school site. The other 3 were at different sites. And both of those teachers were teaching with veteran teachers of 15-plus experienced years. And my 2 VISTA teachers, one driving 2 hours a day from Lake Elsinore to Redlands, they had the highest test scores in the school. They were the trainer of trainers at our school site for social studies and other subject areas. And it was such a thing of pride for me as a support provider to be able to say, wow, look at these teachers leading these discussions in a hardcore staff meeting. Some of these teachers are kind of been together for so long they don't want to, and they were just being role models. And it was never highlighted because, goodness sake, we don't want to let the rookies get all the credit, and it's sad that these teachers need to be lifted up because they're the ones that are going to be running these districts later.
So, thank you, Michelle. Melissa, did you want to add in?
I was just wondering, I know that periodically the teachers, the PTs get progress reports throughout the year, and I wonder if you couldn't just have something in there saying, it's this time of the year, this is what you've accomplished, the ideas that you would kind of be here. Are you feeling supported? Are you feeling this or that? Is there anything that way you're hearing from them, even if it's please contact, please email this, or something if you're not, I don't know, if you could put in something so that you're not waiting until the end of the year to say, do you feel supported? Oh, yeah.
And we're going to be doing a survey in November for that. But one of the things, that kind of is an aspirin, a Band-Aid, and it's something that definitely needs to be done. But understanding what the deeper structural challenges is very important as well.
Thank you, Melissa. And Beth, did I see your hand up? No? Look at Gus.
I'm just going to throw this out there. It's just a statement.
Sure.
I think we also have to, and I'm going to put my admin hat on if I was an admin. They're human.
Yeah.
The other part of the equation is, unfortunately, our colloquium is in the eye of the storm as far as pink slips, future, my career. I am so lucky. I'm so grateful that at our charter school we don't go through that. But on the last colloquium that we had with that, there is a lot of amazing teachers, and all you can tell them is good talent does not go unnoticed. That's all I can offer. So I think that that's very unfortunate, but it's the reality that not only are the PTs' morale is down, concerned, but the admins too, because I have to believe most admins do care about their schools, are quality administrators, and they're human.
Right.
And a lot of times, because of just the whole human aspect that you're pink slipping not only people in VISA, but people who have been at the school for years, at some point something falls.
Yeah, and one of the assumptions that we always proceed with is that everybody has the best possible intentions. But as I said at the beginning, teaching and administering is dilemma-filled. So understanding the dilemmas matter, and then understanding how we can manage the dilemmas so that the district liaisons have the information and the resources they need to perform the job to the best of their ability. Same for the site administrators and the support providers, knowing that everybody is well-intentioned and is doing their best to make this a good learning experience for the new teachers. So yeah, we'd never even want to go into DL or site administrator bashing, because they're valued partners, and we know that they're doing their best. They just may not have the resources, the time, the information to do everything that needs to be done. And given the budget crisis we've had over the years, that is certainly not at all surprising. So,
are you still
okay,
so Melissa, if it's not on there, could we come back, could we add a question or a discussion thread about the site administrator training, and let's couple that, if we can, with the DL roles and responsibilities training or retraining, perhaps.
Okay. Sure. So,
well,
actually, since we've been digging into the administrative role in terms of supporting the support provider PT relationship, so that's a broader context. What we're focusing on is what supports are needed so that the support providers and the PTs can have the most effective possible relationship. And a lot of it does come down to the district liaison support, and then the knowledge and the support of the site administrator. So why don't we talk first about the site administrator training? And is there something specific, Melissa, that you would like to know, or perhaps is a question about what do site administrators need to know or do?
That would be part of it, and then the other would be things or suggestions, things that come to mind of ways to share that information based on the paucity or the low numbers of attendance.
Yeah. Yeah, site administrators, given their schedules, it's so hard for them to come to the trainings where they would be informed about induction. So right now, do you have any ideas for how we might communicate this information that they need through other venues, other avenues?
Okay, let's see. We have Michelle first. I'm sorry. Oh, no, go ahead. Okay. Do you want me to go? Okay, let's get who had their hand up first. Okay, so. All right, no, you did. Go ahead.
Melissa, Elaine, Gus? No, Florence.
I think,
Michelle, sorry. Sorry, Michelle.
Site administrators could easily get information passed down from the consortium through principal meetings. It's something they have to attend. And a handout, a 10-minute spiel, I know, but I mean, if we're thinking, you know, I'm trying to get to every administrator rather than making the administrative training, come to this, it's optional. It's going to be, I opt out because I have too many millions of other things to do on my site.
Yeah.
That would just be my suggestion I'd throw out there.
That's excellent, Michelle. And I actually pleaded, Kathy can testify, I pleaded at district liaison meetings, please get me on your principal agenda. But even those are full, you know, and there are some districts that are very strict about who they'll let on their principal agenda. So, but it helps me enormously to hear the passion from this group. We've got to get to our site administrators. So it's definitely, as Marie said, dilemma management. Okay, there's not an answer, but this dilemma can be managed better, so I'm going to work on that. So, but think that it is good, and I shall continue to keep fighting.
Okay, I know in working with a newer principal, part of it, whether it's lack of training or too much on their plate, which I think is probably the second, I have always met with the principal when I'm going in to meet with a PT. I introduce myself to the principal if I'm off-site. And I have found in my district that most of the principals, in fact all of them with the exception of the newer ones, it's been a very beneficial relationship, and they are as supportive of why I'm there it's the newer principals that there's a problem.
Yeah.
So much on their plate.
Right.
And, they've got a lot to deal with.
Yeah. So one of the things, I'm a real believer in multiple strategies because there's never one silver bullet. So one time I was at the New Teacher Center conference, and they had an actual session in which they talked about training support providers to interact with site administrators, because once you get into that room and start sitting down with them, there's a lot of confidential information you've got to also keep to yourself. But there are also things that you need to share to have a constructive relationship. So one of the things that I'm wondering is, would it be helpful then to actually have some formal segment of the support provider training deal with expectations for your interactions with the site administrators, strategies for communicating with the site administrators, and the expectation that when you go, at least at the beginning of the year, sit down with the site administrator and explain to them who you are, what you're doing, and open the lines of communication so that
you grab them in the hall.
Something. But make it clear that that is an expectation, and then armor the support provider with some sort of script and expectation so that they'll know, well, what do I say? And what are the boundaries of what I can talk to the site administrator about?
Okay, thank you. We've gone Florence to Gus to Beth and then to Jan.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I miss Jessica? Okay, so where was I next? Yes, you're next, Florence.
Thank you very much. I think that FACT has built into it the site administrator checklist where we are supposed to sit down with the site administration and the PT and discuss. Mm-hmm. I have found that kind of is a springboard into building a relationship with the site administrator, and then when I see them, they recognize me, and I know with one of the charter schools I had this last year in particular, whenever the site administrator, who happened to also be the DL for that charter school, whenever she saw me, she wanted to stop and talk and just chat, in a kind of friendly way. And so I felt like I had built a relationship with her, and she was happy to have me on her campus. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's important. But there is the process already built into the FACT bits and program to develop that relationship. I think if we use it. As far as Jessica, is that your name? I had exactly the same experience that she had, as far as I never met my DL except at a one-month training that I think that they put together in all the 8 years I was at Colton. So, mm-hmm. So I think that Kathy must be an amazing.
She is.
an amazing DL. So I just wanted to bring that out because, if every DL were like she is, I think that we would probably not have some of the problems that we're having, because she would be on top of the relationships, on top of the nuances that you have in relationships, so that she would be able to mitigate before it blew out of proportion.
Thank you. I wanted to ask Jessica, where did you think you had your hand up before?
Oh, I'm just kind of thinking too. So
okay, we'll place you before Jan. Is that all right? Okay, thank you. Gus.
I originally didn't have my hand up, but now I thought about something.
Oh, I thought your hand was up. Well, then it will come back to you then. It looked like your hand was going up.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll come back to you then. Okay. Okay, so Beth.
I guess you were asking about what would be the process. I think principals are inundated with trainings and meetings. I mean, I see our poor, and I didn't mean to throw my principal under the bus. I think the neglect of recognizing our support providers was more, didn't cross his mind rather than that he didn't care. I'm quite sure of that.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess what I would think, it's much like we do in staff meetings, okay, the AVID coordinator gives their little piece, the gate coordinator, what's coming up. I'm sort of assuming, or I would think it would be helpful either at cabinet or principals meeting, probably principals meeting, is there a little time where, okay, what's going on, district liaison, can you report to us what we as principals need to know as far as what's going on with the BITSA program, or saying, colloquium is coming up, these are the people who will be finishing, please make sure you're there. And I think a lot of times everything, if it's done with email, I think it's easy for all of us to say, oh, I'm going to put that in a folder and I'll get to it later.
Yeah.
Well, you know what happens with that. But that's what I would think, is that I wouldn't expect all the principals to have to go to all these trainings, but I would expect that the liaison's job to come back and give the pertinent information on a regular basis to the site administrators at their administrative meetings. That to me would seem like the most effective process.
Thank you. Jessica?
I can only say for my school. We're at a high school, so it's not just a principal, but there's 4 APs as well. And it's really the APs that deal more closely with the teachers than the principal at such a large school.
Yeah.
And every time I talk to them, they bring up BITSA sometimes, and it'll always be in the context of, clearing that credential. And I think we need to change the focus of BITSA from clearing the credential to what it actually is. Because all principals want reflective teachers. And to me, what BITSA is a results-oriented way to reflect. It teaches new teachers how to reflect, and what principals are not going to want that. But I don't think thinking about it that way. So I think we need to reframe the conversation so we're teaching them how to be reflective teachers. We're not just clearing their credentials.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Gus? I'm sorry, Jan. Jan and then Gus.
Okay, I'm sitting here thinking about how do we get in the door to top the other bombarding information.
Yeah.
It's like advertisement.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like the wraparound piece of the newspaper that everybody hates. The wraparound piece of the newspaper. There's got to be something different that gets in the office.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was thinking, all right, like you said, emails can be put in the folder. That's not going to work. So I'm thinking, okay, so I came up with the idea of a fax. Now, the secretaries usually get those, right? And we'll probably put it in a folder for the principal to read, but not like 10 pages. I'm talking maybe like a paragraph in 12-point font, easy to read, quick, with bold, and send it maybe once every other week as to what's coming up, what to ask the teacher, what to ask the support provider, just suggestions of upcoming events, like a triad, for example. And whether or not it gets read, at least it's an effort to get into the office in a creative manner.
I have to say that one of the things that it seems like everybody wants to hear, especially if you're an administrator or a manager, it's such a joy to hear the good news, the exciting news. So a way to get somebody's attention, a principal's attention, especially, they've got to report back to others, and they want their teachers to do well. Hey, this is all about an inquiry process. This is about formative assessment. Share the great news. My participating teacher has grappled with this particular strategy and is doing great. In one paragraph with a caption. So something that they can just cut and paste into what they report to their superintendent.
And I think, add on to that, I think I hate to, it's just brainstorming now. I think perhaps the support providers should be in charge of that.
Well, they're the ones who are seeing it.
Susie, I wanted you to know that Susie did a fantastic lesson in science the other day, and she's working on engagement, blah, 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 blah. Okay, and I want to congratulate her or something, real quick, good news, and oh, by the way, there's a triad coming up in the next 3 weeks.
with a little ad for, and you might want to consider seeing this in person.
Like walk through, anyway. But I know we can't administrate the administrators.
Right.
We can't make laws for the administrators. They're the lawmakers. So we've got to come up with a completely different approach.
Yeah. So,
thank you.
Okay.
One of the things I did this year was when we would do, like for example, when I did a formal observation during some of the modules, I'd send them an email saying, you did great, this is really exciting. I CC the principal. I do let them know that the only reason I'm CCing them is for them to be to highlight what you're going through, so it won't be ignored. I'm very strategic about which ones I CC. I don't CC all of them. I only CC the ones that are celebratory. And to my surprise, she emailed them back to them with, like, she did that this year. And of course, principals are different. Mine is a very email-oriented principal. She lives by it. She reads them as soon as they pop in. If you don't have a principal like that, it might not work. The other thing is that we're going to do next year for inquiry, since they have to. We are going through the WASP process, so we have 4 critical academic needs, 4 areas. They're all very general, writing, number sense, stuff like that. So some of our, the PT decided that they wanted to use those as a basis for maybe their inquiry questions and content, which is like huge to the principal, because it's like, guess what we're doing? We're actually using what we need to do anyways, and we're going to apply it through good stuff. So they were just like really excited because they feel like they fought half the battle already, which is, what am I going to do for my inquiry? And they're really like, they were like, we're going to do it anyways, and we really do want to do this because, our school's reputation. So that's one of the other kind of hooks that I thought about, that I'm curious to see how the admin will be maybe a little bit more involved in the process. So that's another idea.
And Jessica, didn't you say earlier that you make overt attempts to connect what they're doing, their inquiry to school initiatives? And we talk this, but I don't know how much that really gets translated. Sometimes the school doesn't have a real overt initiative, but that's really a passion that I have. In fact, I'm writing a letter to the DL that I was working on it yesterday, and part of what I'm saying is that we really do want to support you. So it's Apple Valley Induction Program in partnership with Room Spitza. It's Norton's induction in partnership, so that every district agency school feels like this is our induction program that we administer with the support of Room Spitza. So that is a bit of a shift, but I really do want us to go there. So I love that notion. And I do think that you're right, that's for administrators. If we can find a way to let them know that, look what your teachers are doing in line with what you want them doing. As part of it, it seems like that's real important.
Absolutely. And so the other part of the question that Melissa was asking was about the district liaison. And we have quarterly, right? Quarterly district liaison meetings where we try to communicate with them about what is happening, expectations, all of that. But it has, on the ground, the effects differ. So based on your experiences, what would you suggest that we do to improve the effectiveness of district liaisons?
Clone Kathy.
She's going to have a perspective from that.
Yeah, and is that the question, Melissa?
It starts to get at it, and I think the discussion.
Okay, so we start with Carol. I'm just wondering, do the district liaisons ever attend the follow-up training sessions or any kind of particular training through the BITSA?
Some
Just
do.
for 5 minutes or something?
And Kathy?
I am also a support provider because I think it's very important that I stay on top of what's happening in the support process, so that I attend all of the follow-up sessions as well as the district liaison meetings. I don't know I know that a few of us are that way.
Yeah, Melissa, you're serving as district liaison at this point as well, right?
I am, yes, but before that, the previous DL was our director, and now she's the assistant too. She was not able to attend any of the follow-up sessions. So that does work well, that I am both, so I can attend them as well. But I don't know that that's the case for other districts.
I think that might be a key, is how knowledgeable. If it's a district liaison that, okay, we've got someone in this position, we need to fill this, okay, they don't have quite enough on their plate, good, you do this. Or is it someone who has demonstrated an excellence or a background or a passion for, as you do, this whole program. And I think that's probably, I would bet that's where you're going to find the difference from district to district.
So it goes into the selection criteria, selection process, monitoring of the work of the district liaison.
Exactly. Much.
Yeah. Anyone else? Yes, please.
Kathy question?
Sure.
Melissa question. Are there dimensions, we ask for feedback after the DL meeting, are there dimensions of things that you would like to see which could be in the district liaison meeting, which aren't there now? So there's always information about credentials, there's always information about funding, there's always program, and maybe not to answer now, but that would just be something that could we make that some of that time more robust for you or for your colleagues to help in that area?
Kathy? I think right now, at least in the high desert, a lot of our DLs are credential analysts as well. And so I feel like most of the focus is for the credential analyst. And the DLs are a byproduct. And that's not a slam in any way. The information that is there is necessary for the credentialing process. I think many of the DLs are the CAs, and it's not possible for them to get practical for them to get into the classrooms and know what the support providers are doing. I'm just very fortunate in my district because I was in on the ground floor, and my credential analyst has given me that leeway to just take the ball and run with it. And so I think that helps. As far as something that we could offer, I think definitely emphasize, if possible, that they need to be knowing who their support providers are, and give some of these comments that, to them that they may not be aware that they should be.
Make expectations clear.
I have to reach because I just don't get that. But that's very possible. They just don't know that there's a need.
Yeah.
So just bring that up in the meetings.
Now and then after that, I'm going to do a follow-up question. So Melissa?
I don't know if there's anything I can think of that you would add. I enjoyed last year being in that the DL role. Just coming from a support provider, I just found that there was so much information shared at those meetings. I appreciated that. And before, when Cynthia would attend, sometimes we would have time to connect and sometimes we wouldn't, and so I wouldn't know about all of those things that were going on. But what I feel like I'm taking out of this question for myself is really just the realization that I even could attend those principal meetings periodically and share that information. I think of what a great connection that would be for me to share that, and because I do know them. We're kind of a small district, but just to kind of reiterate, every year or a couple of times a year, what the purpose is and what what they're working on and that kind of thing. So I'm going to go back and speak with Angela about how we maybe can make that happen.
That's great. That's great. Now my follow-up question was, for everybody at the table, what is the most effective thing that your DL does to support your work as a support provider? So, of all the things that your DL does or doesn't do, what is the best thing that person does to support your work?
Jan?
My DL is Princess Solomon.
Situation, because Jan and Carol and Florence right now are working for RCOE, supporting teachers, so they don't have a district. Well, except that Florence sort of does, because you have your 2 charter representatives.
Okay, so what does Princess do?
Well,
that's so great.
Okay. Her favorite word is gentle. Okay.
Right?
She'll...
To me, he tells you that that's her favorite word.
Yeah. I just assume that because it's in every single... Yeah. Anyway, so she sends emails directly to my phone. And said, how you doing? You know, this is how you doing with so-and-so. Where are you? I see that you haven't done this. I gently observed you haven't done this, or
Gentle reminder, you might want to do this.
you know, that type of thing. And I appreciate that because then I know she cares. And so I email her back, and then I keep in touch with her. And so it's a two-way relationship.
Yeah.
Whereas if she's out there in the Netherlands, they don't communicate.
So it's very clear to you that she's very much engaged, that she's following your work, she's helping you stay on task and focused.
It makes me feel important.
Well, it sounds like it makes you feel like you've got a partner in the process.
Right, an ally.
Okay, great.
Fine. Well, I would definitely agree there that Princess has been very supportive this last year as I've been working with the charter schools. I'm thinking back towards my time before I was retired that the DL did email every so often, kind of like Princess has done this last year, and say, you know, she would look at the progress and say, you should be here, and it would be a congratulatory email that you were there, or it would be kind of a rebuff or kind of not so nice of an email if for some reason you weren't there. And so it kind of kept you on track. So I think if I were to pick the most effective thing she has done, because like I said, I see her at the colloquiums and we get these emails from her, but that was about the only contact I had. So I would say that the emails were probably the most effective thing that she did.
Okay. Michelle?
I've gone through 3 DLs since I've been a support provider, and each of them have their strengths, and I've really appreciated the fact that my first DL taught me everything I know and really empowered me to feel like this whole process is something I want to continue with. My second DL gave me more of the reins and said, you know, you seem to know this a lot better than I do because you're in the trenches every day. So knowing in my district that our DLs trust us as support providers and allow us the time we need to be able to work effectively with our participating teachers, I think that's irreplaceable, and it's important to continue. My fear is that as things start getting restructured financially, that BITSA will start to kind of not be that way anymore, and there won't be time for that necessary conversation, because I'll have, you know, my DL will email me and say, what do you think about this? So they really care about what we think as support providers, but I think some of our support providers don't know the DLs that well, and I'm kind of a in-your-face person. I'll just show up and go, hey, you know, you'll learn to like me because I'm going to be here a lot. So. And they have no choice but to have a relationship with me, so I think I'm very comfortable at our district level going in and talking to our DLs, but I think some other support providers aren't, which is why I think we need to make sure in our district that we keep that process going, because it is pretty open-ended and it has worked very well in the past. So I think the open line of communication is key.
Beth?
I would want to reiterate that. I will say that I think our DL is very responsive. You know, if you email her about something, she will get back to you immediately. I love the gentle reminders about, hey, you know what, they're going to be checking support service logs. You might want to get that, you know, caught up. I mean, that's good stuff. I need that. And I will have to say I had a concern, you know, when they changed the stipend, and some of it was a lack of knowledge on my own part. You know, it was just all of a sudden changed. But then through, you know, talking to Barb, and I realized that this was not an unusual thing. But what I really appreciated was her sensitive responses to my concern that they were reducing the stipend and what was this about. She was very timely and really took it seriously, and you know, just let me know how much they did appreciate the work that we did, and you know, we're able to increase the stipends a little bit more. So I really appreciate it. To me, that was, yeah, they did. That was, to me, saying, okay, she's hearing me and this matters to her. So,
Okay. So the question again is, what is the most effective thing that your district liaison does to support you?
I think, again, having the DL know each one of those PTs is beneficial because as we are dealing with the PTs and challenges come up, she's aware. She knows what's going on, and she can be more of a support to us in providing that support.
Right.
And Kathy does know. She knows everyone's situation because she meets with them as well.
Thank you, Jan.
Another thing that Princess did that, well, because I was in an unusual situation, it was a juvenile detention facility, and I was getting frustrated, and my teacher was getting frustrated, and it was just a big, anyway. Princess would come in after school, and the three of us would have the opportunity to talk about the challenges. And then she would make suggestions, very specific suggestions to me and to the teacher on how we could optimize the experience.
Okay.
Now that was very valuable because I was getting in, so we were both overweight, drowning, so that was very good.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated that.
Thank you. Gus?
I think as I reflect on RDL, I don't have a lot of contact with her, but I realize that because of the distance, she wears a lot of hats as well. But I do appreciate the fact that she's very trusting, like she had mentioned. I'm sorry, can't see her. Michelle had mentioned about just that idea that she's very confident in who she has placed. One of the things I do appreciate is she's always. We have fortunately, she offers us like, who would you like to mentor next year? Would you want to stay with the same person? She tries to align it by grades, but if it doesn't happen, she's always asking us first, like, how do you feel? So she's very considerate in that aspect, even just like I had mentioned about trying to find someone else. I appreciate that. Like, I think, and I know she probably feels that, well, I'm not there at that site 24/7, so I don't know, the qualities as well as those support providers, so I need to trust in them. So just that idea that she's there, trusting us and having confidence in us really helps us kind of know that we have someone capable in that position, and if I do need to talk to her about a concern, that she'd be available.
Now, the flip side of the coin, of course, and knowing that nobody is perfect and we all have a lot of work on our plate, what do you wish your DL would or could do to support you? What area do you need additional support from your DL?
I had a comment from Terry on that. Is that all right to do? Sure. Yeah. So before I signed off with Terry, she said she heard someone else suggest that she really wished that they would hold in district some support provider meetings because they learn from each other.
Right.
That actually is professional development, professional learning for them, and she used those words.
Yeah, and I know of a district where they do that, and the support providers are very grateful for that opportunity to interact. Yeah. Jessica?
I agree as well, and at my site I think there's probably about 8 or 9 support providers, and sometimes some of us will meet and we'll talk, but it's really informal. So I agree if it could be site-specific or district-specific even, but maybe like high school, middle school, elementary, because the challenges are much different. And in a small district like ours, they tend to group us all together, and half the time that high school teacher just sitting there because what's going on doesn't apply to us. So if it could be high school specific or upper grade specific, would be really helpful.
I think that, to paraphrase in my mind, job alike, communication, for example, a special ed PT doesn't need to sit in on regularly because it's completely well, not completely, but very different. Expectations, there are additional expectations on Vince's part for a special educator. So a job-alike meeting where you can support each other in the process, I think is important.
Job-alike meetings for support providers?
Yes, for support providers.
So, but in terms of which PTs you're supporting?
Right.
So if you're all supporting special ed? Okay, gotcha. So, everybody else, what additional support would you like to have from your district liaison? What would help you be more effective in your work?
Sorry?
I think this is to do with the budget, but when I was getting to the end of my years at Colton, they really sat on the ability to be able to have release time. It's very difficult to get release time for the PT, to be able to go and observe other teachers. It's very difficult for me to get release time. They limited the amount of time that I could ask for. Well, how are you going to get a substitute to come in if you're not secondary to take just an hour or two of your time? They're not going to accept that kind of a job unless they don't have anything else to do. And so there were often times when I had arranged for a substitute following the district guidelines, and no one showed up. And so I frantically had to call my PT and say, I am so sorry. I don't have a sub. I can't leave my classroom. Nobody from the school office will come and take over for an hour for me to come and see you. And so I think that is a big, maybe if the district liaison could work through those hurdles a little bit and try to provide release time, because it's really hard to do everything after school, especially if you want somebody to observe good teaching.
Thank you, Beth.
I'm thinking to be more of maybe an advocate for especially the business teachers, in the sense that, at the beginning of the year, and I know there's only so much you can do maybe, but the principal is like, okay, everyone sign up for 2 committees, like at our site. And I'm just like, I mean, as a veteran teacher, sometimes you're like, no. Like, I'm only going to sign up for 1, and I got all these other things, and you can defend yourself, because I do have other things that consume my time, and, the Sunshine Committee is not important right now. As the participating teacher, that's intimidating.
Yeah.
And like, the whole year, I'm like trying to think, okay, like, give them a break, like, do you really need to be in running club? And they feel they do. They feel and I have to tell them, you have to prioritize your time. The most important thing is rise to the top, and so maybe by being a content advocate, maybe at the beginning of the year, maybe talking to the principal and just saying, you really need to be considerate in regards to what your expectations are, because just like in our classroom, equal is not equitable. It just blows my mind how all the things we expect our students to do, like sometimes we forget that it's the same thing with our teachers, especially if you're the admin in the teacher role. And it's like, it's just because everyone needs to be on 2 committees, it's not equitable, because you're not taking into account that their circumstances and their background is completely different from me. I can do a lot of things, but I've been teaching for a while. But I'm not going to expect that from a new teacher.
So basically not allowing the new teacher to be a novice.
Or to be a buffer, to try to be like that kind of, I mean, if you can't do it, at least try. At least have that one conversation saying, hey, JP or whatever, the principal is, have you ever thought about, what a first-year teacher is? Remember you in your first year? Like,
and maybe having a meeting with the PTs and they let them know, you could say this, this, or this, giving them permission to be selective.
And thank you, Michelle. Sorry, I'm echoing again, but I just think it's so important that for my DL, we have a new DL, and very knowledgeable as far as our district and curriculum and everything goes, but VISTA not so much, and that's because it hasn't been on her radar a lot, because there's been another DL doing VISTA. But for me and our district personally, I think it's just very important to echo what everybody else is saying, to be the advocates for the support providers and the new teachers, and say, hey, look, this is what's going to be expected of your VISTA teachers. And because we don't have full-time release support providers any longer, if your support provider happens to be at your school site, you need to know that they are going to be released to be able to go do observations and follow-up meetings with teachers, so that the substitutes do show up, and knowing that, giving us the reins, so to speak, so that we don't get questioned on, well, why did you take a full day for that when you only saw this teacher for 3 hours, 2 or 3 hours, but yet you were documenting, they were using the computer for PowerPoint that you couldn't document on business. You have to go back to the RDO and script out your, documentation that they don't know that you're doing.
Right.
So these are things that I think the DLs need to understand and pass on to the principals, so that the principals don't get angry when you're a full-time teacher. But I missed 13 days of work last year to support my teachers, in addition to the time at home that I didn't even ask for, documenting and things like that. And I do it wholeheartedly, but in order to do the job effectively, you can't teach full-time and never get time to be able to support those teachers.
Right. Thank you, Beth.
Well, and that might just be a knowledge piece. I think, for instance, you do it. You're a support provider, so you understand, the time that's needed. And I know that moving some of the trainings to the afternoon was to give us the release time in the morning. Unfortunately, if you're not involved in the fact process, you don't understand that sometimes where the trainings fall is not necessarily where you are in the whole process. And so it sounds good to say, well, that's when you'll do your observations, but the two don't necessarily align. And I think maybe that the district liaisons, if they're not familiar with FACT, don't understand that alignment, and maybe just need to be informed about that.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I have a question. Our lunch is here. What is the group consensus? Shall we finish our interview? And Marie, feel free to chime in here if you have
It seems like we've really gotten to the heart of the matter. I've got additional questions, but we've been going at this for a while now, so...
We can break for lunch and then, or continue our interview and then have lunch, or...
I really want to be able to hit the RBO.
Yeah, okay.
That's why I'm here.
Okay.
My question is, do you want to do them while you eat, or do we want to talk and then wait and see?
Actually,
lunch will stay hot.
Let's deal, since we've got
30 minutes.
30 minutes, let's deal with your pressing concerns now. So, Kathy, tell us about RBO.
I'm here on behalf of Elaine to do this. I'm representing one other support provider who, like Elaine, had nothing but problems. And I completely understand a lot of it is old computers. It's just impossible. Regardless, now we were given permission in the DL meeting, but regardless, I said to my support providers at one of our meetings, if you can do it on the RVO, do it. And if you can't, go back to the old-fashioned paper way. I'll take the flak. And we had to do that. So I'm going to let Elaine speak.
Thank you. It was an ongoing challenge.
What is
all year? The computers, whether it was the computers or the program, it turned out mostly the program. Because I found as the different situations, different problems appeared in the program, if I waited 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, that particular program problem was alleviated, and there would be a different program problem to deal with. Saving information.
Okay.
I mean,
I was about to say, in order for, we need specifics.
Specifically, saving information was a humongous problem. Going through and saving the information as you're inputting continually. I believe it's 15 minutes was supposed to be the time frame. We got to the point where we would save every 5. Just save. And even still, sometimes I would be doing that, and I'd go back, gone.
Really? Okay.
Gone. I started compiling a list of all of the different, because I tend to do mine very late at night when everything's done and quiet, and I have all my notes.
Have you called in?
I have. She laughed at me. She actually laughed at me.
What? Who did you talk to?
I didn't even ask, because at that point I had a list, and the response was, "Oh, you've been saving this up." Sounds like yes, I have. I actually had, at one point when I was inputting information, a completely different name appeared, and I wrote down the name at that time. And it turned out to be a PT who had gone through the program 5 years ago. They couldn't even explain. I never served that PT. They couldn't explain how that appeared on my site as I was trying to input information for my support for my teachers.
Okay. Now, one of the things that I understand that you're having a lot of problems, but as I said, this is a technical problem. So in order for me to go back and report to the technical team, I need very specific information about what the problem is. If you called in, what was the response? What was done? Was it solved? So this is one of those situations where documentation really does matter so that we can fix whatever the problem is. And I apologize for any difficulty that you have had with RBO, certainly. And I'm not saying I'm not interested. I'm just saying, there are certain things we need in order to get it fixed. Okay, so is saving the primary problem that you've encountered?
Yes, and I don't know if that issue was actually ever fixed, because one of the situations for instance, in selecting focus students, we had to do an afternoon class. My particular teacher had a morning class and a completely different afternoon class. So we selected focus students for each of those classes and the second alternate. And I never was able to input because I started taking over the inputting for her because it was such a nightmare. When I would select for her morning class, and save. I would attempt to select her afternoon class and save. Morning class was gone. And that right up to the end. I was never able to get both focus students inputted. Okay, and that's the level of detail that is very helpful, knowing which form you're having trouble in, where in the sequence you're having problems. That's very helpful. One of the things, just in general for the room, whenever you encounter a problem with RBO, let them know immediately. And the person that is really effective in dealing with these situations is Linda Sonata. So contacting her right away and letting her know that there's a problem. That's linda.sanada@ucr.edu. Let her know immediately, because oftentimes we don't get information about these things until, say, a DL meeting. Or
we were hearing things about the saving, but we kept assuming that people were just forgetting to save. And then one of our staff said, no, really, I saved it, and I saved it in the time, and it was gone. So can I just ask the room, how many others of you had similar questions? So, okay, so there's a...
Okay, and similar problems with saving, where you've input it and you've saved right away, 5 minutes later, whatever, and it's not there.
An entire observation.
Okay, so this case it was an observation record.
Me too.
Yeah, Angel had that. That was what Angel was expressing, and I think we tried. The explanation was that she was using those characters that she shouldn't have, but clearly that.
Well, she was using characters that would cause her problem. When she explained her problem, she was actually bounced out of the system. It created a server error because she was using special characters, which gives us, when analyzing what is going on with a program, you have to be incredibly precise and systematic. So a saving error is is one thing. What you're describing is a very particular type of error where you're entering it in, you're saving it within the time frame, you go back in, and it's not there. And I can totally get behind being upset about that. I would be furious. However, in Angel's case, what happened was she actually had a server error which bounced her out of the system. It logged her out. So show of hands, for how many has that happened? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. And in those cases, was there anything in particular that you did that triggered that? That you can remember? Huh?
I hit the save button.
And you were just
Thrown out.
Thrown out of the system.
And it was gone. And it was gone.
Okay. Okay. Now, did you contact?
Yes.
Okay.
Immediately. The people that are doing it are teachers in the classroom. They can't just always be there at the right time to get somebody. It's often after 5 o'clock. And most of the time it's after 5 o'clock.
Now, you can also send, if I'm not mistaken, an email.
Yeah.
Oh, and one of the advantages of getting the email, for the server error, for example, our network administrator needs to have the data of, okay, when did this happen, so that he can go into the server records and look at what was going on with the server to determine what was going on that might have created that error. It's part of the diagnostic process. So for him, it doesn't help him to get that information the next day. He needs to know then, which is why, you don't get a lot of satisfaction right away from sending an email, but he gets the data he needs to make, hopefully, a diagnosis of what's going on. Yes, Beth.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jan was first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'll defer to you.
I'm a problem solver, as you already guessed.
Yes.
Here's another idea. RBO for dummies. And I'm thinking of 2 sections in the manual.
Yep.
The how-to is one for the PT, one for the SP. Troubleshooting section.
Yep.
In the front page, they have a space for your username and your password to fill in.
Okay.
And the troubleshooting page. And the contacts listed in there of who to contact and the links.
Yeah.
And to contact. And to make it as clear and simple, I mean, I'm speaking for myself now. As possible in this little handbook that we all get.
Right. And one of the things that we've really been talking about and I'm working on this year is how do we make troubleshooting and getting help much more transparent right up there so that you don't struggle with frustration. Who do I talk to? How do I get in touch with them? So creating something like an RBO for dummies or something where on the particular page, if you're having trouble, there's your help button right there, and here's, I don't know if we can go as far as online chat with a technician, but some way that is really transparent, really visible, really easy so that the users can get the help they need in a timely manner without having to fish around for who do I talk to and how do I do it.
Okay, Beth? Oh, sorry, Beth, I'm going to ask just a question. Because many of you have used RBO for many years. Was it worse this year?
Yes.
In certain areas for me.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that for me.
Not overall. Okay, I have specific areas where I have major issues with the RBO, which I've never had in the past.
Really?
I'm a lover of the RBO.
What are your specific areas?
Wasn't Beth before?
Okay, Beth is
for me, and part of this is my own, technology deficits, I guess. But to me, I don't understand why saving is so hard. Like if I'm typing a Word document, before it lets me go somewhere else, they're going to say, do you want to save this? And it's like you get in the middle of this and you're working on it and you want to go to the next page and you click the next page. I just lost you know, because I didn't click that little save thing. It's like, I'm saying not. Saving should be much easier. It just doesn't seem like it should be that hard. But I don't know.
One of the things you do need to know is that it's going to cost over $80,000 to create autosave. Because we need to completely rebuild our server system, get in servers.
And that's what I put was autosave.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
We've been working on pricing it. Yeah, we can certainly do it, but if somebody will give us $80,000 to $100,000, then that's the price of admission for autosave.
That I was going to say was, I love my follow-up trainings, but I have to say of all the follow-up trainings that I've had, the one where they were explaining the new technology for the system was probably the most frustrating. And I didn't feel like there were enough trainers in the room to address different issues. So I kind of felt like the questions and struggles I was having, it was like, well, just wait, and they really never got addressed. And so I think maybe at that particular training it would have been effective maybe to have some folks from UCR who were involved in this to be there in addition to the RCOE trainers so that we could, I felt like I went away, I kind of get this, but I really don't.
Yeah, and the technical team members certainly would be willing to do that.
I think the PT probably taught me as much as anybody about the whole system because she was very good at it, and I liked a lot of the changes.
Okay.
But the autosave and the training I got up front were the two areas that would be helpful to me.
Okay. So, thinking constructively, unfortunately the budget is not going to allow autosave. We've been researching that problem as far as the equipment and the budget all year, since the very beginning of the year when this concern came up. So if you guys have other ideas of how to achieve the same goal.
Well, we can explore that. I mean, it sounds like we've got to figure out some way to resolve
that problem.
But so that I think I would like to hear other, the other.
Okay. Well, was Michelle next?
Well, Jessica actually had her semi up, and I was wondering if she did.
I just had a question because I encountered this all the time with the server error, and I didn't even think about it. I just started pushing save after each box, but before I pressed save, I would cut and paste, so I had it pasted, and I'm hearing now with special characters, if it could be communicated to us, that if because I use all kinds of characters.
Well, and special characters they will trigger a server error, and that is something that's built into Microsoft, the program that Microsoft uses, because basically some of the special characters are used in hacking.
Okay.
Well, I'm not a technical. If Linda Sinaldo were here, she would be able to tell you. However, I am a researcher. I'm not a programmer, so I can't help you with that.
If we could just, if we could get an email that told us what those special characters were.
And the other thing that well, the thing is, if again, you could contact the technical team as soon as the problem arises, explain to them what you did and the problem that occurred, then they could give you the diagnosis of what's going on. The problem that we have is that there are different versions of problems. So in your case, it may be the characters, and sure, I can suggest to Linda that she sends out an announcement saying that don't use these particular characters. I think carrots or something like that. But we still, in order to fix the problem, we still need to know what the problem is. What exactly did you do? When did it happen? In a very timely manner so that we can go into the system, pull up the data, and see, oh, okay, this sequence here triggered this bug. We don't know where to look in the code unless we get that complaint or report in a timely manner when it happens.
Michelle.
Okay. As far as saving data, I found my site-specific teachers, and this was only through trial and error. My teachers on one of my high school campuses were told only to log on to the internet through Firefox, which has huge problems with Vista, or vice versa. And so most of all of my teachers that use Firefox, which are most of my just out of college brand new teachers, that's just their go-to area. They are having huge problems. Things are disappearing. When they go through Internet Explorer, it's not happening as much.
Right. And I have a question. I've been wondering if part of it has to do with Firefox, because when I use Firefox in conjunction with smaller label websites like the credit union, for example, I can't use it with the credit union anymore because I get thrown out of the system. Firefox increasingly is incompatible with programs like that. So one of the questions that I have is for those of you who are having problems, how many of you do use Firefox or use Chrome or something outside of IE?
Almost at all.
Okay, Chrome, Firefox, those two programs are increasingly incompatible with independently programmed web applications. So I've just gone ahead and taken both of those programs off of my browsers, off of my computer, and I only use IE because...
Yeah, see, and I haven't had a lot of these problems, and I only use IE.
Yeah.
Well, just IE.
Okay, so it may, just use IE,
which is great, but my teachers will literally say, you're old school. That's a generational thing. And
it's not a generation.
But then when it happens, I go, told you so, and I found
Right. Well, in my experience, I have to say, I have been historically in the kind of in the mental framework of the new teachers. I don't want to use IE. I want to use Firefox, and if I can't use Firefox, I'm going to use Chrome.
Well, and they'll tell you that.
Right, exactly. That has totally been my attitude, but the thing is that increasingly, whenever I use an independently programmed web application, so that would be RBO, for example, my credit union has a little independent thingamajigger program. Whenever I use an independently programmed a web application, it will increasingly crash with Firefox or Chrome. Things just won't work.
Right.
And then,
bringing it up to let you know that most of our new teachers don't use Internet Explorer.
Right. And that it's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
And I've been there. And me and the network administrator had a long series of conversations about, hey, wait a minute. Why is it that Firefox doesn't work with this, Chrome doesn't work with this, IE is the only thing now that is working, and the number of programs that I could use with these others browsers just diminish. So try RBO with IE and see if it's smoother for you.
It is.
That's your experience. Okay.
Do you want my other specifics?
Sure. Yes. But that one right there was extremely helpful.
Okay. And then I don't know about everybody else, but when my teachers, they love doing everything through the RBO. As soon as they found out in the past few years that they can upload things, it's great because they can just use their flash drive and give me the whole unit online, and I can share it at our meetings. However, they want to put stuff on and they're getting told this is too large, do this, do that, and then they get frustrated. And then we have to put the notation in there on file printed with teacher, and you go back to what you did 10 years ago.
Okay. If the problem is that it's too large, could you send basically to Linda Sonata an idea, maybe even send her a sample?
I can tell her a PT that she can look at.
Tell her a PT and give her an idea, a sample of this is what this PT would like to upload, but we're getting error messages. And one of the things that I really love about Linda Sonata is that she is a problem solver. She is really eager. She wants to make things right. She wants people to be happy. And once you give her a challenge like this, she'll dig her teeth into it, and she'll stick to it until she figures out how can we make this PT happy. Sometimes, unfortunately, the answer may be we can't with this particular problem, but she'll do her darndest to make it right. Okay.
The continuum.
Yeah.
Love that it got put on the RVO, and then until we started using it. And I ended up having to do like, print the first page, go here, do this, or this will happen. I mean, teachers were literally calling me crying, in tears, bawling their heads off, because they said, can't I just do this on paper, like when the teachers were year 2?
Well, now, this is the continuum. The continuum actually isn't on RVO.
Well, how they're saving it. So here's the problem.
The saving problem.
Yeah. You have to get your evidence. We talked earlier, Gus, and everyone about telling them, well, you're already doing this. So when you're putting yourself on a continuum, just list in the column what you're doing in your classroom that warrants the fact that this is evidence to support where you placed yourself on the continuum. All right, cool. Then they have to right-click to get the correct typing method to be able to type in the column. And then if they're using a different program, it's a different way to get a different font. And if they're using the wrong font, it won't save. I did this with them. I put myself through it and tried 3 different things and watched it happen. And they just literally, it's taken me 4 hours to get through one CSTP. Then they put their documentation in the column, and they go to save, and it won't save it.
Right. Okay. So the continuum is something that is that Commission on Teacher Credentialing designed thing. What I'm wondering is how much of the information about what we've talked about with the continuum, the fact that the continuum, there's a saving problem with the continuum because of the version of Adobe. I apologize, I'm not a technical person, so I can't give you the details of this. But early in the year, we got a lot of complaints about saving to the continuum. It was huge. And what we discovered was that there was specifically a problem with the version of Adobe. It's an Adobe version situation, so that you can only save it once, and then after that you can't save it anymore. But what I'm wondering is, were you guys informed that basically for the continuum, it's buggy and there are certain things that you have to do?
We were told in our follow-ups, it's just when you get to your teachers to tell them. I mean, I was literally going to every site and saying, okay, this is going to be an issue, just know, and let me help you through this.
Okay.
But then they wanted to be overachievers, and they're like,
yeah, well,
and it's just hard because,
providers been told to use paper. Worst comes to worst.
We have revised our directions for using continuum completely for next year. It's just going to be a lot less. And a lot of support provider options for making it meaningful. Less requirements, more options. But that doesn't really speak to the tool issue, that the tool itself is frustrating. And not to seem defensive, but that truly isn't RVO. That is the Adobe that came from the state. So Linda Sonata actually begged me, please, can I just program it and do it ourselves? It would work better. But of course, that's time and money and effort and energy. So we're trying to figure that out. But I know for me, to be able to have the continuum book and to open it and look and read and see it all, that's my learning style. So that certainly is an option, and we've talked about that. So there are ways around it, but hearing this for me, it's like...
But knowing that we were told we had to have them save it those 3 times in a specific format, the teachers did not want to save it on paper. Because they were like, no way, this is my 2nd year on this, or on SC57, I want to get this done right. So, I mean, they would send it to me at home, I would change it, I'd tweak little words and try and get it, and it was just horrific. I mean, the saving thing was minimal compared to the continuing problem we had.
I didn't have any of those problems. I just don't know what... Now, we always use the sticky notes. I didn't use the little sidebar thing. I only used the sticky notes, and I didn't even use those little abbreviations codes anymore.
Yeah,
we just wrote down comments, just the sticky notes, comments. I wonder if it's computer related.
Yeah, you're using IE, right?
Yes, and we just go through.
And your new teachers a lot of them are using Firefox.
Well, something messes up and then they listen.
So I piloted the continuum, and I piloted it with teachers at a charter school. It has everything in the world to do with the version of Adobe and which platform. Mac versus PC, and where you download it has everything to do.
And you told me that as
I
well.
told you that, and that's why I was so glad that I had seen, I had a small group of support providers. They had 6 support providers. They all brought PC laptops, and I had 5 different ways that continuum looked when they all downloaded it at the same time in the same room with me, because of the operating systems and which versions they had. So that's why I knew that I was at least able, I couldn't solve it, but I knew that your school bar was going to be here, and yours was going to be down here, and hers was going to be over here, and she was going to have to look for hers.
And thankfully you were able to tell me that, otherwise it would have been
help too much, but at least what I'm saying is that truly, I just want you to know, it really is a platform issue, and it's an Adobe issue. I just want you to know that.
And as a new teacher, if that's all you have access to, you can't ask your IT department to put this on instead, because they aren't going to do that. They're going to put what their site administrator has them using on that PC.
Well, and what my biggest worry is that the last thing in the world we want to be doing is to gain teachers is adding this whole layer of frustration.
Exactly.
Right. Of marking the continuum of all things. You know, please, they've got bigger fish to fry. And, we have, as I said, we have seriously revised our directions for what to do with the continuum. We're going to take a much more global view. But in terms of really remedying this so that the teachers aren't saddled with this layer of frustration, I think we may need to come, as a team, come back around the table and really...
One of the things that I would recommend as an interim for RBO, based on my experience this year with Firefox and Chrome, whatever you do, do not use RBO on those browsers. I am sorry for those of you who, or have PTs who love Firefox and Chrome. I gave up my addiction to them kicking and screaming, but RBO probably is only going to work for you on IE. I think you're going to continue to have crashing problems if you use Firefox or Chrome.
I think what I'm going to have time to do in the fall is come out specifically and really dig in and see what's happening, and so that we can try to support you there with that burden.
It's time now.
Yeah, it really does. It breaks my heart in a sense, because the last thing in the world we want to do is add like frustration to them. Because it has really been a good tool, Michelle.
Oh, I agree. I'm not bashing RBO. I love it, but those are glaring issues that
I teach. I have to tell you, I really do believe that it's a browser problem, because I've had the same sorts of problems getting kicked out, losing data, when I've been trying to do bill pay on my credit union site.
At all.
Well, I can't tell you, but...
I know. Well, I wonder what the connection is to, like, an older version of a computer. And who knows?
And that's why I stopped doing things at school, because, these could be in antique stores. They're so old. But, working on a newer one.
Well, like I said, I'm pretty systematic about these things, and my experience has been that Firefox and Chrome just aren't particularly reliable when it comes to, and it seems like there's a pattern here that the people who have Firefox or Chrome are having more trouble than the people who are working exclusively on IE.
That's right.
And that also fits with my experience.
Are we ready to...
I think we're ready to wrap up, yes.
To bring to a close in terms of the official formal interview. I just can't thank you enough for your time today and your honest and open comments. I would like to encourage you to get lunch and hang around. If there are other things that, maybe were there other things related to RBO that you needed to explore, that was amazing.
I may not want to put this on the tape.